Painting has been going a little slower than planned, but here's a sneak peek of one corner. I think it's going to be a very inspiring room. This week I was the guest on one of my favourite podcasts,
the James McMahon Music Podcast.
After making my own show for a couple of years, I found it quite nerve-wracking and a little bit awkward being on the other side of the line of questioning, but we had a really interesting conversation. I haven't had like a life where I feel super confident. I've never felt like I'm a star. I deserve to be a musician. I deserve to make money from selling music or anything. Very much the opposite thing. So it's been a very slow creep towards this sort of confident exterior that maybe comes across in the things that I do. I've really had to push myself to be that. And it's not a fake thing. It's not like my theatrical version of myself. I want to be very honest all the time. So I've got myself there over many years. For instance, I don't like accepting applause. So when I was playing shows, I'd sort of cower or kind of like go make a joke or like try and move on. Someone told me off and said, applause is something that people are giving you. If you reject that, you're rejecting those people's experience. It's like if someone gives you a compliment and you go, oh no, you're wrong, and you explain all the ways the person is wrong about the nice thing they said to you, versus just shutting up and saying thank you so much. I loved that song you played at the end and you're like, oh no, I was out of tune and this went wrong and this went wrong, and they're just kind of like, I don't know what to do with this information. I just wanted to give a compliment and now this person's kind of reducing my own experience of this thing. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, it's a weird thing to do to someone. The point I was making, though, was that the idea of a musician, a songwriter, artist being in service to their community, being a part of their community, not being a superstar on a stage far above everybody else who everyone's supposed to love and throw money at and adore. So if I think about it that way, then I'm going to be less shy about sharing my music, reminding people that it's there. If I think, and I know that I try to bake this into everything I do, every song that I make, I want to be useful to somebody else. It's not me going, look what I can do, look how I can sing all these notes and I can do this too. I'm not showing off. I'm actually just going, hi, this might help you. I've just completed recording my 6th album. I've been doing this a while now and no one can take that stuff away from me because I now have that experience. And whereas even when I was doing my first record, I probably could have shared, my thoughts on various things. I kind of thought I was auditioning to be in my own life for quite a long time. And I don't feel that way anymore. So it's nice to be able to just leave all that shit behind, really, because it's such a waste of time. I don't do much press stuff, so despite being a little bit worried about whether I would remember how to answer questions instead of just asking them, James really made me feel at ease and I felt comfortable talking about some pretty personal stuff. I was bullied at school. I moved around every 3 years because my dad was in the forces. And so I never really had friends for very long. I didn't learn how to keep friends. It's something I've realised recently. It was all so temporary. There's no point getting to be really close friends with someone because then they're going to leave or you're going to leave. Went to the next school, my accent would be wrong. I'd learned the wrong stuff, like in whatever subject. Just relentless bullying from people, looking the wrong way, according to them and all that stuff. And then a series of relationships that would, on the whole, hideously bad for me. That just erodes your self-confidence. And I mean, even my first boyfriend telling me that I shouldn't bother trying to sing because I was no good. I was only 16. How was I supposed to be brilliant at 16? So those things take a toll. And then it's just about kind of like pulling myself out of that. I don't know what metaphor to use here. Dragging myself out by just going, I need to do this. I need to make music. I don't think I'm good enough yet, but I'm going to try. And so just, keeping trying till I could do it. Oh, probably all of it. I'm a middle child, James, who was from a forces background with no friends. It's all about like trying to make my parents proud or something, or trying to impress someone, trying to show that I can do the things that everyone said I couldn't do. Because when you're bullied at school, people make you think you're stupid and ugly and all of these things that are not true or important anyway, right? And then, honestly, I remember thinking when I was, maybe 11 or 12, it's okay because I'm the funny one. So I would always have friends who were, in my opinion, prettier than me and whatever than me. But it's okay because I'm the funny one. And so I became someone who just learned how to do things. Because I never thought that I had looks that I could coast on. I don't know if I do or not, and it really shouldn't be about that anyway. I have no idea. But I spent most of my life thinking I was absolutely hideous to look at. Therefore, I had to be interesting, well-read, funny, good at stuff. And that's actually great, isn't it, if you think about it? Because it means you're not just going to wonder about trying to get stuff because of your face that you have by accident. They're amazing, aren't they? They're so big. The bigger the frames, the bigger the brain. How about that? As a podcaster myself, we inevitably got onto the subject of my podcast and why I've stopped making it. I think podcasting is so wonderful. It's kind of like blogs were before Twitter came along and semi-ruined all of that fun. You can create your own show, obviously. It's your platform to speak about things that you really care about. I'd like to think only really good things do well in podcast land. I'd love it to be a meritocracy, like I would love music to be a meritocracy. But I don't think it is really, because obviously if you're a celebrity or if you're someone who's really funded by one of those big organisations who have a lot of podcasts, then you're going to have a lot more marketing and stuff, or any marketing for your podcast. So of course it's not as simple as if it's good it will rise to the top. But the wonderful thing about podcasts is that you can make something anyway. Like you can make your own website, you can make your own blog, you can make your own podcast, and that's a really beautiful thing, I think. I felt like I could go into podcasting and it would be judged on its merits, and I think it was. It's really exciting to get into the podcast chart with no marketing, no one helping at all. That's really exciting because it felt to me like, oh, this could be something. And the thing is, it is something anyway. It's not that it could be something, it is something. I made something, it's important. But it does take an inordinate amount of time to make a really high quality podcast, and I only want to make really high quality things that are of value to others. This is not for my own aggrandisement or arrogance or anything. I want to make something that's useful. So I felt that it was useful, and the feedback I got from my existing audience was so wonderful. But it also just as you will know, it gets to be a grind trying to say every week, there's a new episode and I'm really excited about it in lots of different ways. Plus, before the pandemic, musicians didn't go on podcasts as much, I don't think. And then since the pandemic started, a weird side effect is that musicians were going on every single podcast like it's a tour, because they couldn't tour. And I totally get that, and it makes a lot of sense. It's a cool thing to do. But it means that they're not going to be sharing the episode of your podcast. And when you're not getting paid a shitload of money to do something, it's very much about sharing and connecting and all of those things, more than it would be normally. And it's just really hard to be the only person shouting about something. So I felt that my energy was being sucked in a direction that perhaps it wasn't best used. And then I had to think about the reasons for doing the podcast really, really and truly were to show people that creativity comes from everyone. It's not for special people only. Even the people that you think are like amazing and they're really well known and stuff, they have their doubts and fears and stuff all the time, that everyone's battling with their inner critic. And so what I felt was that my podcast did show that, and people really responded to that. But what I could do that was a better use of my energy and would achieve those goals better would be to be a lot more direct, which is why I've started putting all of my energy into my YouTube channel instead. And instead of talking to other people about the things I wanted to get across, I just say them now, and it's a lot quicker. I used to make music under a different name. My name was She Makes War, and I did that for 10 years. 10 years properly, and then more years before that when I was like, oh, I'm not good enough to make songs. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. And I eventually got round to it. So let's say 10 years of productive time. During which time I managed to work my way from being a freelance video person, audio person, and all those other freelancey things, to being a full-time artist because of the support of my audience, only them. I think I was closing myself into a little box that could never expand. And there's this brilliant concept that one of my favourite podcasters talked about recently. His name is Andy J. Pizza. The podcast is Creative Pep Talk. He was talking about how a container for something needs to either match the contents or purposefully not match the contents. So say there's a band or an artist and they're called She Makes War, and they make music that's actually pacifist music about love and self-love and gaining confidence and all the things that I write music about. And you go, hang on, this doesn't match that. This thing here, this container is maybe off-putting, or I'm confused by the contents of the container. It just sort of didn't match me as I basically grew up using that name. It just became so far away from what I was doing. Like I couldn't even say it out loud anymore. I couldn't introduce myself that way. It was ridiculous. And I was like, I cannot spend another, hopefully 10, 20, 30 years making albums, cowering away from this name that I made for myself. And so I tried to find a really graceful way of saying, this is over, and it's nothing to do with the music. I'm very proud of the music I made. So anyone who loved that music and supported that music, I'm not turning my back on it and saying you're an idiot for liking it. because that would be so rude. It's like that compliment thing. But it's time to evolve. If I didn't have a mailing list that I've had for 10 years, I would have thought twice about it, because it's very easy to just lose everyone. Like, you can't contact anyone anymore. So when I thought about Penfriend, my new name, I thought about all of the opportunities that that name would give me, because it's so in keeping with the things that I love, so letter writing. I had started thinking about the fact that my songs and my albums are gifts that I send out to people. Yes, of course they pay for them, and I'm so glad they do. But I send them out. I basically run a mail order business. That's, you know, the heart of what I do. And I just thought, yeah, this is going to suit that so much better. And it just means the box that I sort of was contained within, like the lid's open now. I can do anything. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out the link in the description box for the whole episode. And especially if you were a fan of my podcast, Attention Engineer, I think you'll really enjoy James's show. If you enjoyed this video, please click like to help it spread to other people, subscribe if you haven't already, and sign up to my mailing list via the link below for some free songs and stories. If you missed the news about my studio move, this video will get you up to date. And if you've been having trouble getting started with your own creative project, this video will help. See you next week.